Welcome back to The Pulse. With us now is Tameka Henry, an incoming member of Clark County School Board, District C. Tameka, congratulations on winning the election.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Before we get into the questions, please tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm Tameka Henry. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 4. I am the executive director of the nonprofit, the Obodo Collective. We run a community garden in the historic west side of Las Vegas. I'm a native to Las Vegas, and so I just love our community.
Yes, and you've been very involved with many things, especially that in community-wise, you've been involved in several organizations, based from your bio and the write-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the North Las Vegas Board of Trustees and also with Head Start, I serve on the board of directors for Head Start as the chairperson now. So a lot of community involvement.
Nice. Give us a map, maybe streets or landmark where District C is.
So with District C, I always like to say it's the heart of the community. So with the historic West Side, certain parts of North Las Vegas. So from Ann and Losi to Ann and the 95, clear over to Sahara, like Sahara Indicator. So for some landmarks like schools, CSN High School, Cheyenne, Mojave, Western is one of my high schools as well. It's a pretty large district.
I see. So what inspired you to run for the school board?
Well, I was inspired to run for the school board because I'm a product of the school district. I know that there are great people who come from our school district, and we oftentimes hear about all of the negative things and being 48th and 49th in the nation for education, and that wasn't the reality for myself or my children. But I know that it's the reality for so many. And so I wanted to run for school board to make sure that I was bringing representation from our communities, making sure to have a strong voice, and being a strong advocate for those members of our community who are underserved.
So what are the urgent issues in the Clark County School District that are important for you to address?
For me to address, like right away, right now, we're going to need a new superintendent, and that's going to be like one of our first, one of the first things that we address. So, superintendent, we need a CFO or someone to oversee our financials with the school district, but. Things that are urgent is just making sure that all students have access to a high quality education. So we need strong educators within our school system. And right now we're short about 1,000 licensed educators. And so just building that pipeline for educators into our school district is going to be extremely important.
Good to know. Will the rise in the number of charter schools continue to drain the resources of regular public schools?
That's a great question. I think that it's important for parents and families to have access to great education, great schools, and some charter schools do offer that, but our public schools do as well. For me, I think that it's important for us as a school district to position ourselves to be that first option that families want to choose. You know, it's important that we have strong schools within our school district where that are in our neighborhoods. You know, I'm not against charter schools, but I know that all students won't have access because they have transportation barriers, and sometimes they have to purchase uniforms, and many of our families may not be able to afford those. And so, I think that it's important for our public school system, Clark County School District, needs to position ourselves to be the most viable and that first choice for families.
Yeah. And you just enlightened us because, I think ever since the pandemic, there has been a shortage of school bus drivers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, with our school bus drivers, within our school system, we're low on educators, we're low on support staff, and we need to, again, position ourselves to be that quality option where people want to come to work.
Yeah.
You hear so many negative things. Like, people are not applying to go work at a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Seriously. We want it to be a positive environment where people want to come and work because
Yeah.
our students deserve that.
Yeah. And I came from like also I came from a public school, and there were times that I've made friends. I've got active in some extracurricular activities, and then, of course, some classrooms kind of would suck or be good depending on who's the teacher. And I think it boils down into why there is so much negative of the education system, because it goes back to the 19th century, and where these original billionaires helped created the public education system in the first place, is because of what's his name, Rockefeller, in what he said. I want America to be a nation of workers, not thinkers. And fast forward, it's like it's where there are things that are widely public information thanks to the World Wide Web, and it has like a threat to the status quo of some wealthy individuals, and so they'll do everything in their power to make sure that education is underfunded. Yeah, or like mass privatize the education system. And so we have this rise of like negative views of like the public schools, but they at the same time they advocate for like mass privatization of the education system, like private schools, or and for instance as charter schools.
Right. There are great educators out there.
Yeah, of course.
There are great programs that are happening within our schools as well. And they often get overshadowed by all of the negativity and, the failures that are happening. So I would love to make sure that we're replicating and really highlighting those great programs that exist, but also creating that pipeline for educators to come into our school system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like here in this forum, it happened here in this building where we had gathered all the candidates at the candidates forum, where I heard someone said that they always talk negative things about the problems and the negative views of the education, but they don't talk about how those problems can be solved.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so important to be solutions oriented because
Yeah.
we can talk problems all day. We can talk problems ad nauseum, but it's so important for us to talk solutions and talk solutions with not only our educators, with our administrators, but we have to really strengthen our family and community engagement, making sure that families and the community has a voice in education as well, because they are pivotal in making sure that it's strengthened.
Before we move on to the next question, which I also wanted to point out in what you said, is that like because of the lack of resources of teachers and because of the lack of teachers, I've been involved in like for like the Filipino American community, and I have to say that like there's been more teachers coming in from Philippines, going to these schools, whether it's public, charter, private, and we would be involved in like this welcome party for that's what they call the J1 visa. It's like for the teachers. It's like visa for the teachers, for their like temporary like stay for like when they, like a 5-year contract for the
Right.
schools before they go back to Philippines or something happens. And so we've hosted this welcome party, and we help give them the resources to get things started in the first place before their first day of school as a teacher in United States schools. So yeah.
So important for you all to be, that hub for those educators so they can get acclimated to, our state, our school system. So thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're welcome. So what are we expecting in this new cycle of the board with 2 more members, or maybe about 3, who are part of this right-wing organizations or Moms for Liberty being elected?
You know, I get that question quite often. It's like, how are you going to work with these individuals? You know, I like to build relationships with people. You know, it's just important to understand where they're coming from, but also share my perspective and where we're coming from. Collectively, we need to make the best decisions on behalf of all students. And so when they're talking different, you know, talking different book bans and things like that, I think that it's important that we focus and go back to what's really important.
Yeah.
That there are, you know, 30% of our students who are not reading on grade level. So when you're talking about banning books, that's not the important piece. We need to make sure that students are literate, right?
Yeah.
And so you know, I'm really one of those who's really for common sense, you know, just
Real common sense.
Real common sense.
Yeah, common sense. Not those common sense that people on the right talk about on the stage, and yet they're doing the antithesis of common sense.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that we are making the best decisions on behalf of our school district, those decisions that are going to impact our students. I feel in my heart we all want what's best for our students, for our children. I still have a child that's in the school district. But it's not just about our children. Now we have been elected. We are elected to make decisions on behalf of all students.
Yeah. And speaking of book ban or burning books, and it's funny because there's a story in a science fiction dystopia where books are outlawed and books are burned by about 451 degrees. I think it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. And guess what? That's a story from a book, and it talks about burning books.
I mean, and if you're burning books, you'll never get those stories.
Exactly.
Right? You'll never have access to that history. You know, books are an important part of education. And, you know, when people are trying to ban books or ban history, like that gives you the opportunity to write history. And it's like, no, we have the right to know. Our students have the right to know. So.
With Trump's election and the talks of abolishing the Department of Education and the effects of Project 2025, what do you think will happen for Nevada's education?
You know, I really feel that, you know, some of those bans include like getting rid of Head Start. Head Start is one of those programs that was pivotal for my family, for myself and my children. It wasn't just about educating my child. It was also about teaching me how to be my child's first teacher. Really advanced me in being an advocate for education. And when families don't have that, when children don't have that Head Start, you know, those best investments are early. You're able to identify if there are any learning disabilities. You're able to create those opportunities for learning early, that love of learning. And when you talk about getting rid of quality programs like that, that's problematic. You know, also for those who have disabilities, you know, those protections that the Department of Education bring. I do have a deep hope that our Board of Education here will carry out those laws that are important for families who have children with disabilities, for those who are underserved. A lot of our schools are Title I schools, and they need that additional funding that comes from the Department of Education. So if we lose that, we lose that additional funding that helps with wraparound services like after school tutoring. When you're talking about getting rid of school lunches, my daily work is combating food insecurity. And so that's another meal that students won't have access to.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to, you know, advocate that they keep it around, but also start strengthening ourselves in the state of Nevada to make sure that we need to make sure that we have the funding to carry out education.
Yeah. And a few pointers is that, like, they think they can just, go over there based from these agendas. They can just do it from like immediately, or they think that they can just, but it takes like certain areas gradually if they want to,
Right. It takes
abolish it.
time. Yeah, it absolutely
They
takes
think
time.
it's like they think they can just do it overnight.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, it doesn't happen overnight, but also it's important that we educate our community members and our families and build them up as advocates as to why it's important that we have the Department of Education, the funding that is needed, what that funding covers here locally. It's important for us to share that so they know that it's an urgency that we need to protect public education.
Yeah. And regarding about food insecurity, and all the candidates for there who are running for the education positions and the school boards throughout the past election cycle was mostly about kids are hungry, students are hungry, and I think it was Mercedes McKinley, I think, who said that hey, Miss McKinley said lunch yet? They said they're hungry.
Yeah.
And I remember during we do remember during our high school days when lunchtime was like around 10 something, and then like when school ends at like 1 p.m., it's like we go in, eat our second lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I work with families daily who face food insecurity.
Yeah.
I've worked with families who are unfortunately living in their cars with their children.
Yeah.
Schools are a safe space for our students. It's about education. It's about education for sure. But also when you can have those meals at school, when you can have that safety for our students, they have better outcomes, So I think that it's important for us to continue to really build family and community engagement. It's important to have partnerships with other nonprofit organizations, community organizations who can provide wraparound services for our students so they're not coming to school hungry and that they have the supplies that they need to learn. It's just something that I feel very passionate about, and it's going to take all of us to improve education here in Clark County.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing your insights,
Of
Tameka.
course.
Before we go, and we will leave it at here, any last words from you?
I thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to being of service to our school district. I feel that we have the opportunity to rebuild and restore trust with our community. I know that everyone has watched our school board meetings throughout the past few years, and just really looking forward to bringing honor and respect back to the board so we can make the very necessary and bold decisions to move our district forward.
Well, Tameka Henry, thank you for coming to the Pulse.
You are very welcome. I appreciate you.